Hey guys, and welcome to the Fish Room. I'm Rachel O'Leary and it's Thursday, and this week the weather is absolutely dreadful. With our wind chills, it's getting down to -15 here, which has meant that I can't ship fish. Frustrating for me and for my customers after, not being able to ship during the holidays. But what it has allowed me to do is really spend a lot of time down here in the fish room, cleaning aquariums, looking at the fish, and really just plain enjoying myself. One of the things that I see the most in the comments section from you guys is asking about my feeding, what I feed, how I feed. So I thought today I would talk to you about the foods that I use most commonly in my fish room and tell you the reasons why. Now in my nutrition video, which I can link you to here, I told you guys that I really try and avoid terrestrial grains in the foods that I'm feeding my fish, and I try and replicate a diet that they would actually encounter. And one of the reasons I like to really avoid those grains and flours and stuff in the foods I feed my fish is because I found that most of it just gets excreted out through the fish, leading to more clogged filters and cloudier water. So I try and feed a nice range of either live or frozen foods, good quality pellets, and some freeze-dried foods. Today I have some bug bites, which I feed to Captain Cranky Pants, this large cichlid formula. And I'm actually kind of stoked because he's been on the same diet forever and he's really picky and obviously cranky. So it's nice that he's willing to eat something that actually has ingredients that he would eat. I do also supplement him with live foods, meaning crickets, earthworms, red wiggler worms, and things like that when I have them. He's already eyeing me up. I have some of the small sinking bottom feeder formula of the bug bites to feed my shrimp and some of the smaller bottom feeders. And again, this is dried black soldier fly larvae, salmon, things like that. It does have wheat in it, so this is not a primary diet that I feed, but it is in the rotation. I also have some frozen foods. I have baby brine shrimp and cyclops. Cyclops is probably my favorite frozen food. It's a microcrustacean suitable for freshwater and saltwater fish. It's nice and small, and they take to it really, really well. Now it is a bit more expensive and a little bit harder to find, but in general, it's my favorite frozen food. Now when I'm buying frozen foods, it's actually my preference to not buy them in these little cubes. I like to buy them in the big flat packs, and that's because they use less water in the packaging for those, or at least it seems that way to me. Because I have so many fish and such densely stocked tanks since I'm a business, I tend to not defrost this food and I just drop it in the aquarium. I also have some freeze-dried krill, which is what I feed to the big boys, mainly because they already poop Lincoln logs. So I try and not add anything else to their diet that's just going to be excreted to make a mess, because their filter is gross on a good day when I clean it. And water clarity is also an issue. Now another diet you guys see me feed all the time, or at least demonstrate with all the time, is Sarah O-Nip. Now Sarah O-Nip is a pellet that can be stuck to the glass. And in my fish room, it's really useful for me to be able to get inventory of my fish, get a good look at body condition. The fish really like it. The ingredients list is not my favorite, at least not the first few ingredients. Let me see if I can find it in English. Fish meal, flour, yeast is fine, milk powder, then it's krill, bloodworms, Gouramis, tubifex, egg powder, spirulina algae meal, sea algae meal, and it goes on like that. And those ingredients are all great. So while this is not my staple diet, this is a good solution for me in my fish room. And again, the fish really like it. All of the fish, for the most part, well, the vast majority of the fish that I work with down here in the fish room are sort of micro predators in the wild, eating little tiny insects and microcrustaceans found in their native waterways. So trying to feed the frozen food and a facsimile of that in a dried formula really seems to work out well. So I thought what I would do today is go around and feed all the aquariums, and then we can take a closer look into some of them to see how the fish respond. So I'm going to start with my frozen foods, and I'm going to feed all of my high pan citrus plecos frozen food today. And again, these are fish that are meat eaters in the wild, so this is a really great diet for them. So I'm just going to drop some baby brine, which is a little bit small for them, but they still eat it, into my high pansistrus aquariums. I'm also going to drop some into this Kriegi tetra and my Nanostomus equus aquarium, and various other ones around the fish room. We'll take a look in a moment. So this is one of the high pansistrus aquariums, and I've dropped in some of the frozen food. And you can see that the high pansistrus, this is high pansistrus contradens, are definitely excited about that, as are the Laeticara. You can see little peaks of fish everywhere just feasting. Now up here are clown barbs and drapefin barbs, and they also got some frozen food, and they are looking fantastic as well. Next door over here are the Stiphodon atropurpureus. Now in the wild, these guys are called what's called off-wax grazers, which means they graze on algae that grows on rocks in fast-moving areas of flow, and in that algae is often trapped microcrustaceans as well. So I fed these guys today a little bit of baby brine. Normally they get the gelatinized food Soylent Green by Repashy Superfoods, which is my favorite, but I need to spend some time in the kitchen making more. Look at that guy. Woo! Man, he's pretty. Now pretty soon I'm going to be moving a few of these into my 150. Oh, and you can see that the betta male likes it as well. In the geriatric retirement community, they got both pellets and frozen food. I dropped a cube of baby brine as well as some of the bug bites in here. Mainly because there's so many fish and some of them are faster moving than others. I wanted to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to eat. Up here are some wild apistos that I'd really like to get spawning, so they got some frozen food, and there's already some chasing behavior going on, which makes me think that they're going to be spawning in no time. And you can see as well in their aquarium that I have lots of caves and hides set up so that they can avoid each other as needed. Over here are the tangerine tiger shrimp. Over here are the tangerine tiger shrimp, and I dropped in a spattering of bug bites into here, and there's little groups of shrimp all over the place just pigging out. And I only feed my shrimp probably about twice a week, and I've shown you guys in the past, I know when they're hungry, when they're all swimming around actively seeking food. You have to understand, shrimp will always go for supplemental food. They are pigs and they eat constantly, but that doesn't always mean that it's the best thing for our aquariums. I like to feed them sparingly to prevent secondary pests like planaria and hydra. This aquarium houses my super red plecos as well as some various neon tetras that I took in as a surrender a long time ago. And these guys are breeding. So this tank has to be fed pretty heavily in order to maintain the juveniles that are in here, which is why there's also a lot of Malaysian trumpet snails. You can see some babies on the back wall there. There's one here. You can see a bunch of babies on the back wall here. So I feed this aquarium frequently and relatively heavily. There's a baby there, there. This aquarium is my Neocaridina call aquarium, as well as housing some breeding rainbows and longfin ancistrus. And there is fry of all types everywhere. There's baby plecos, there's baby shrimp, there's baby rainbows. So in this aquarium I feed a range of diets, including frozen as well as pelleted foods. Where'd the rainbows go? So that all the different types of species being fed in here get a good chance to eat. And it works out really well. Next door to them are the shellies. Now for the shellies, I usually feed them small scale pellets, some of which I pulverize for all the fry in here and some of which I leave whole. Keep in mind, just because a food's large, it doesn't mean you can't feed it. I often use a spice grinder or even just my fingers to pulverize bigger foods into smaller portions for smaller fish or baby fish. You can see everybody's out and about to eat in here, and these guys were fed Cyclops today. And again, because this tank has a lot of fry, they get fed at least twice a day, sometimes more. There's a Synodontis lucipinus. We rarely get to see them. Up here are Apistogramma cockatoides, as well as some Endler hybrids. And they just get fed a generic diet. Over here, you guys can see how nicely these fish have colored up, even in just the past few days. This is Trigonostigma espi, or the lamb chop rasbora, and Microdivaria cubitai. And I've been feeding them predominantly frozen foods in order to give them the carotenoids found in the shells to improve their color and boost their immunity, as they are new imports. Over here, we have some wild Class N Endlers. Let's see if we can get them in focus for you. And a chili rasbora, apparently, and some Habrosis cories. Everybody's doing really well. In here we have what's left of my ram fry. There's maybe a dozen or so. Over here we have Danio choprae, the glow light Danio. Coloring up really well. Down here, this tank doesn't have a light. We have my sumo loaches, as well as a Chisis catfish. Over here we have a tank of sparkling gourami, as well as a bunch of fry from my Indian hatchets, as well as Trigonostigma somfongzi, which are those guys right there. These are the Indian hatchet fry, the sparkling gourami, and then I also have my Barbuca diabolica in here. They're almost ready to move into the 150 as well. In the Pygmaeus tank, I fed some sinking pellets and some frozen, which makes everybody really wiggly and happy. It's a ruby tetra as well. Over here are the Carai tetras. They just got fed the pellets. Down here are Brevibora dorsea salata, the emerald eye rasbora. They got fed baby brine. Some of them are not quite as fat as I would like, so they got fed a bit more than usual. I have a bunch of empty tanks right now, so I'm not showing you everything. Dario got frozen foods. Which they really enjoy. Now generally this is a species that prefers live, but they've taken to dried foods really well in here. So that's great. The Heragerdoni got a bunch of frozen food, so you can see they do a little wiggle dance similar to cories during feeding time, and it makes them super happy to get frozen or live foods. They will take pellets, but they definitely do best on a meaty diet of microcrustaceans. The 150, I put in a Cuba Cyclops and some pelleted food, some of the bug bites for the loaches. Sometimes it's an obstacle in this aquarium, making sure that everybody gets to eat, because things like the dace and the rainbow shiner and even the meteor minnows are such good feeders. So I like to put in foods to distract them, like the frozen foods, and then add in pellets for all the various loach species I have in here, as well as the Rhinogobius, and this ensures that everybody gets to eat. There's a little female Rhinogobius as well. My cherry shrimp tank, I just dropped in a few pellets, which they've already devoured. This aquarium also houses zebra nereids. And I've been maintaining this particular colony of cherry shrimp since 2003. Now for the big boys, I'm just going to drop in a big heaping handful of krill. I saved this to show you guys because it's kind of fun to watch. the gar always go a bit bananas right off the bat. But you can see even the polypterus smell it right away. Now, since all of these fish are large predatory ambush predators, I only feed them a couple of times a week. In the wild, they're not used to eating every day, so it's really unnecessary to feed them every day in the fish room, unless I were to be having issues with aggression or things like that, where I wanted to make sure that they were really, really full all the time. But you can see by their body condition, they are certainly not suffering from only being fed a couple of times a week. They're all very, very plump. And just really incredible fish. And all that's left is Captain Cranky Pants. Now I'm going to drop in some of this cichlid formula for Captain Cranky Pants. He can be a little dramatic. He likes to try and jump out and get me. He wasn't too bad today. Whiskey gets a separate diet, which is a sinking cichlid staple food. And I generally feed Captain first, otherwise he eats all of Whiskey's food as well. So I feed him, he gets distracted at the surface, and then I drop in the pellets for Whiskey, and then Whiskey can eat as well. And they're both absolute garbage disposals. Whiskey goes around and just sort of inhales everything all at once, and then sits there and chews it, and then makes another round inhaling everything at once. Kind of cool. So one of the most important factors when I'm feeding down here is I really like to feed little and often, as opposed to really big meals. This is a more natural representation of how these little tiny fish eat in the wild. They just basically eat whenever they can. So feeding a very small quantity a couple of times a day, I think, is the best thing for them. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed seeing me sort of feed my fish, well, most of them anyway. And make sure you have that notification bell on, because I'm going to be going live tomorrow, and I would love to see a lot of you there. Also, make sure you stop by my Instagram, my Facebook, and my website, MsJinx.com, where you can find my upcoming speaking engagements, my current stock list, and information on all things nano.